Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about communication and career agency. It's so easy for our communication and our sense of career agency to become decoupled throughout our career, and actually they're inextricably linked. So it's very important that we work out why it becomes decoupled and how we can get it back together. 24% of women in the C-suite leave. That's 3 times the amount of men at just 7%. And a really shocking statistic that I read this week, 79% of women who have not received a promotion since the beginning of COVID in 2019. That's nearly 80% of women not receiving promotions in such a long time period. Now, there's lots of reasons that we're not getting those promotions. There's lots of reasons why we're leaving those more senior roles. And it can be to do with when we have children. It can be to do with finances. It's also to do with the fact that we are the sandwich generation. So we're caught between looking after children and elderly parents. And sometimes the strain of that is just too much with a full-time job. So there are lots of reasons that women are leaving their jobs. But one of those reasons, and the one that we're here to talk about today, is how we communicate. How we communicate our wants, our needs, our desires, our career ambitions. It's all vital to having and maintaining and keeping career agency throughout our lives. So why is it important to think about career agency and what goes wrong and why we need it? Well, the thing is, and if you've been around here for any length of time, you will have heard me say this 1,000 times, and I will keep saying it, but everything that you think about yourself will come out in your communication somehow. And so if you're feeling a loss of agency in your career, it is going to come out in the way that you communicate in your organization. And then that means that becomes your story, that becomes your narrative of what you say and how you are perceived within your organization, and sometimes external to your organization as well. The next thing is career agency is really important because as women, we are used to serving the needs of other people. We are used to looking after other people. We serve our teams, we serve our organization, we serve our families, and often our needs get put to the bottom. So when it comes to articulating our career needs or wants or ambitions, it can be quite hard on 2 counts. 1, to really know what they are, and 2, then articulate them, because we're just not used to A, tuning into what we really want, and B, articulating that. And so that means if we're not articulating what we really want, we are making less conscious choices about our career. We are being less intentional about what happens right now and what happens in the future. And so it can, at that stage, it can feel like, and this may or may not be true, but it can feel like your career is beginning to flounder slightly, or it is just taking you in a particular direction, one that you never truly intended to go on, but you're just being taken by the motion. It's also really easy at this point to feel undervalued, to feel like you are being overlooked, that your abilities and your potential are not really being recognized by your organization because they're just either allowing you to move off in this particular direction, or they just expect that that's what you're going to do. So it's very easy to feel like you can become invisible for some people, or just not well seen by your organization. What are the consequences? Well, if we're feeling undervalued, if we're not feeling like we're getting the promotions we want, if we feel like we can't articulate our needs within an organization, we generally tend to take the off-ramp. We step out of the business. Now, once women step off on the off-ramp, it is really quite difficult to get back on, even if you're only out of the business for a very short period of time. I think it's about 14 months is the time period. If you step out of a career, it becomes exponentially harder to get back on and get back to where you were in terms of status in terms of the title or the position within the company, and pay. Pay is takes a significant hit if you step on to that off ramp. And the big consequence is that organizations are losing these incredible women that could be wonderful, amazing leaders within their organizations. And they're leaving because they feel undervalued, because they feel unseen. And that means we are losing role models. So if you're within an organization, you look up within your organization, are there enough women who look like you, who speak like you, who behave like you within your organization? Or do you find the farther up the structure you go, the more men there are in your organization? So it's bad for us as individuals as we leave careers that we didn't necessarily want to leave, but have sort of felt like we're just fed up and it's not going in the direction we want. And it's bad for organizations, and it's bad for the women coming through underneath us. So when we're losing connection with that sense of career agency and with a sense of being able to articulate what we want, it is bad for everybody in the working environment. So when we lose agency, we absolutely lose our ability to communicate with credibility and with clarity. And that really impacts on the everyday. It's not just in those big, super visible places where we're presenting. This will impact in water cooler conversations. It will impact in meetings. It will impact at networking sessions. There's an impact that happens when we're feeling undervalued and underseen. Our communication becomes less clear and less effective. We can also really, really get stuck in this, what I call the stagnation, frustration, recrimination cycle. So if we have lost sense of our career agency, we're not articulating, we're not communicating what we really want, we can feel like our career has stalled or stagnated. And it's just not a nice energy to feel that you are stuck in. And then that leads to frustration. You're frustrated that so-and-so has been promoted and you haven't, or so-and-so has been offered an opportunity to be part of a particular task force, or such and such has got a pay rise and you didn't. And so those frustrations with other people and with yourself come to the fore. And again, it's just not a nice energy to feel like you're stuck in. And both of those things lead to the recrimination stage. So recrimination is where we're saying to ourselves, look, so-and-so did it. You know, if only you put yourself forward and you didn't, you procrastinated again, and you didn't put yourself forward, you didn't speak up if you had the opportunity, or you didn't create the opportunity to speak up. And those recriminations come in, and then we feel more frustrated with ourselves, more frustrated with the situation. And unfortunately, we develop into a downward spiral, which is really not pleasant for ourselves. And again, doesn't give off a great vibe for those people that we are around, that are around us even. And if we are feeling like we are shut down, so in meetings or in networking sessions that we aren't seen, or perhaps we aren't heard, so we might speak up, we get interrupted, we get told that that idea has been used before and it didn't work. When we get shut down enough times, it kind of sends a signal to us. It's like, actually, what I'm saying here is not valued. What I have to offer isn't necessarily something that the people in this room want. And so we stop trying. We stop trying to give our ideas. We sit quietly in meetings. We take notes. We have those thoughts, those great ideas, those solutions to problems that are facing the people around the table, but we start to stop speaking up about them, which is not so good for us and not so good for the people in the room, because valuable ideas, valuable concepts are really being lost because we've told ourselves and felt that we aren't valued within this organization. And we stop believing in our own capacity. We stop believing in what we've achieved so far, and really, really importantly, our potential for moving forward. It can be very easy to become disengaged when the external feedback coming into you is that what you're giving is not valued, what you're just not being seen by this organization. It can really impact on how we feel about ourselves when that external feedback is less than positive or just absent sometimes. It's not that it's not positive. It's not that people around us don't think we're doing a great job. It's just that they're not articulating it to us. And so that can leave us really feeling unseen and unheard. Now, the flip side of this, and I see this an awful lot, and I see this at the beginning of programs, I see this at the beginning of coaching. When I compliment a client about something that they're doing really, really well, they kind of shrug it off. They're like, oh, well, you know, that's something I know really well, or that's something I've done before, or I used a bit of a speech that I did before. And they literally will close their eyes, they'll turn their head, and they bat the compliment away with their hand. So when we get disconnected from our sense of agency over our career, we may be hearing compliments from clients, from strategic partners, from our teams, from our bosses even. We tend to start dismissing them. And we think, oh, they're just being nice, or they have to say that because they're part of my team or they're a new member. And so we create all these reasons why that person is being nice to us, rather than really hearing the compliment that they're giving us and allowing it to be absorbed into our systems and knowing on a really deep level that what they're saying is true. And also, if you happen to be neurodiverse, so if you're dyslexic, dyspraxic, or have ADHD, or a combination of those things, that is even more amplified. So for those of us who are neurodiverse, there's a tendency to believe that all your successes were accidents, or the other person was being generous or kind or nice. So it was a fluke that you had success. However, on the downside, we're very good at saying that all those times that you, in quotes, failed or things didn't go well, that was totally down to ourselves, to the way that we behaved, that what we did made that failure happen, if you like. So when we're feeling disconnected from our career agency, very easy to stop noticing, stop hearing, stop absorbing the good feedback that we're getting around us. We dismiss it with all the other stuff that is going on. And then the final impact, which is kind of obvious if you think about it, is we simply stop putting ourselves forward for things. So if there's a volunteer program, if there's a task force that's being created, if there's a promotion, if there's a job at another organization, we start to give ourselves loads and loads and loads of reasons why we aren't suitable for that role. Lots. And I'm going to talk about some of those reasons in a minute, but we will start to find reasons why we are not suitable. And so we don't put ourselves forward. And that reinforces this frustration and stagnation sense that we have about ourselves, and will oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, again, lead to that recrimination, that kind of, you should have gone for that job. Look, so-and-so's got it from such and such. You've been doing your job for that much longer. You know you've got experience. You know deep down in your heart of hearts that actually you could do that role. In fact, you're probably doing it already. You're just not being recognized for it in title and in pay. So we stop putting ourselves forward. So when we are disconnected from our sense of career agency, our communication, so our body communication, so what we're telling people with our body language, our tone of voice, and the things we do and don't say are really, really impacted. And it's so easy for that to become the narrative of the organization. That's how they see you, because it's how you see yourself, and how they perceive you becomes the reality of the situation. I know it's an old adage, but it's an old adage for a reason. Perception is reality. Now, one of the things I want to talk about today is that it doesn't have to be like this. It really, really doesn't. So if you're at all scientific minded, you're going to want some evidence, right? And all good scientists like evidence. And even if you're not a scientist, we as human beings, we like to find evidence around us for why things are and aren't true. So I'm going to tell you very briefly about the last 3 cohorts of women that have gone through my program. So that's 15 women in total, and the program is Influential Leadership for Women. And they're coming to the program at various stages of disconnection of agency through their careers. That's not why they've come to talk to me. They've come to talk to me for a variety of reasons. But actually, it's become clear over the years that I've been doing this that there's a definite disconnection in their career agency. So out of the 15 women that have gone through the last 3 cohorts, one woman has left her company and started a biotech startup. And she sent me an email a couple of weeks ago to say that she'd had her first investor meeting and is seriously now getting into raising money. Another lady has started a side hustle. So she's realized she's got a particular area of expertise. It's quite rare, this kind of expertise. So she started up a side hustle, which is an online business teaching people about this one particular area that she happens to be expert in, which is aligned to, but isn't her job. Now, this is her exit strategy. So over time, she's going to build this side up and eventually leave her corporate role. I have had another lady whose career was really stalled and she was super frustrated by this, but also not ready to step into a more senior position, has just been made MD of her organization, which is a huge compliment to her skills and her potential. And really not surprising once you got to know her, she was absolutely MD material. She just didn't believe it when we first started working together. She was completely disconnected from her ability to steer her own career. I've had a lady resign from an incredibly toxic consultancy position. She was very senior, but the hours that she was working, the things that she was doing were just ridiculous. And it was really taking a toll on her health. And she has resigned and incredibly manifested the most amazing job. I mean, if she had sat down and written her dream job, this would be it. And I think she did. I think this is what happened. And she created this job. It arrived in the perfect company at the perfect time. And she emailed me this week to say that she'd been offered the job, which is so exciting. I've had 2 other women who realized during the program that it wasn't them, it was the organizations that they were in. And they had done all the work, they changed their environment, so the immediate environment they were working with, but they couldn't change the larger, the global environment. And so they felt the agency to say, actually, you know what? I am valuable. I offer great value to this organization. I'm going to go and get that somewhere else. And so they've both resigned and they're both in the process of looking for jobs. So those are 6 women who have taken the plunge when they've realized they had become disconnected from their career agency and reconnected with it, and then made very conscious, very intentional decisions about where their career is going next. And these things, I always find these things fascinating. So as I was sitting down last night to plan this, I had a coaching call this morning with my current cohort. And we always start off with communication wins. And 2 women on that program handed in their resignations this week because they too have realized that it's not them, it's the organization that they're in, and their value is worth so much elsewhere. And those 2 women are actually only halfway through the program, so they haven't even got to the end yet. But they both felt they handled that conversation, that ability to walk into an office and say, I'm leaving, really, really well. They felt like they'd reconnected with their career agency, and they're in control of what happens next. They're being so intentional about where they go next and what they do next. And the lightness with which they came to the session today was just amazing. It was really, really inspirational. So if you want evidence, there's some evidence. Just because you feel disconnected now doesn't mean you're always going to feel disconnected. You can feel reconnected. So let's have a look. What were the things, some of the things that those women did. Now, some of those women did all of these things. Some of those women did some of these things. And we also did some things that I'm not going to talk about today because we don't really have time. But here are 5 things that you could do if you want to start to reconnect to a sense of having agency over your career, because these things are going to impact your communication, and your communication is going to drive what happens to you over the coming weeks and months and years. So as always, we are going to take an inside out approach. So everything that we do within this organization is always based on an inside out approach. The reason for that is I could tell you how to behave. I could tell you all the things that you should do. I could tell you how to sit. I could tell you how to stand. I could tell you how to articulate what it is you want to articulate. But those things aren't going to work. They're not going to work when you get stressed. They're not going to work when the environment or the climate becomes fractious or difficult. The reason they're not going to work then, because we haven't done the mindset. And as I said right at the beginning of this video, everything you think will come out in your feelings and it will affect your behaviors. So really where we need to start when we're trying to reconnect to career agency is with the inside, first of all, the thoughts and the feelings. So the very first thing that I would suggest that you start to do is to notice. Notice how you feel. Now, that sounds really superficial and really easy, right? But actually, as I said, as women, we're very used to putting our needs at the bottom of the pile. We're used to looking after our children, our partners, our teams, our organizations, our communities, our parents, all of those things. We put, even our pets, we put all of those things above our needs. And so we become disconnected with sensing how we feel. So the first thing I would really encourage you to do is tune in to how you feel about your job. Do you love it? Do you still want to be there? Do you feel like you can offer great value in the job that you're in? Do you feel frustrated? Are you feeling stuck in stagnation? Are you feeling resentful of other people who are creating success around you and you feel like it's passing you by? What are those feelings? Very important to say here, don't judge yourself for any of those feelings that come up. So if you're feeling resentful for somebody who's got a promotion that you haven't got, brilliant. That's fantastic information. If it triggers you in any way, that's where you need to pay your attention. So why do you feel resentful? What did they do that you haven't done? What did they say that you aren't saying? What action are they taking? What thoughts are they thinking? What things are they saying that you are not doing right now? That is incredibly valuable information. So really think about, how do I feel? Really tune into the sensations in your body. And sometimes it can be really helpful to think about where in your body you're actually feeling them and what they genuinely feel like. Sharp, dull, do they have a color? Do they have a temperature to them? Those kind of things can really help you tune in to how you're feeling about your career situation now. Because until we know how you feel about what's going on, we don't know where we need to go next. We don't know what we need to put our attention on in order to begin to fix it, to move it, to create something new from it. Now, the second thing that I'd really like you to think about is, do you need a PhD? Weird question, I know, right? Now, what I mean is, we can be very, very good at saying we need another PhD. So I will go for that promotion when I've done another year. I will put myself forward for that task force when I've learned how to use a particular piece of software or a particular project planning system, whatever it might be, whatever's relevant to your career. I will apply for that role once I've got 2 more years experience. I will apply for that role once my children are in nursery. Now, that's a totally valid reason at times, but we have to make sure that genuinely is the reason and we're not using that as a procrastination tool. So when we're saying, if then I'll do this. So if X, then I'll Y. It might be totally valid. And that's absolutely fine. But we do need to check in with ourselves. Are we using this as a way to procrastinate, to stop ourselves from doing something? Or is it a genuine reason? Now, if we are doing that regularly, I would bet my house it's because we don't think we're enough in some way. So we're not smart enough, we're not old enough, we're too old, i.e. not young enough, we're too experienced, if there's a 2 in there, I'm too X or I'm too Y, it is about how we feel about ourselves, how enough we feel. So it might be worth just tuning into that as well. Are you noticing yourself saying, I'm too X, I'm too Y? If so, it's because you don't feel like you are enough. And there are lots of other videos on this YouTube channel about the sense of enoughness and how that affects our communication. So I'm not going to dive in deep here, but it will affect how you talk and how you communicate with yourself, with your teams, with your boss, with your organization. Now, the next thing, the third thing that I would recommend you do is that you record. So sit down, write. So you could draw this, you can write this, you could record this on your phone, whichever system works best for you. What value do you genuinely offer your organization? What value do you genuinely offer your organization? And I want you to think about that in 2 ways. I want you to think about the tangible things you do. So what are the other way of saying this is, what are the hard skills that you have? So it might be that you are an incredible project manager, or you are an incredible developer, or you are a very good interviewer, whatever it might be. What are the actual tangible skills that you have that you bring to your team, to your organization, that offer value? So how does it make their lives easier, more effective? How does it get you as a team to your goals, or the individuals to their goals? So what's that? Then I want you to have a think about, what are the intangible things and value that you bring to your team? So by intangible things, I mean your adaptive skills, so your people skills. So it could be that you're brilliant at noticing when someone in the room is off color and isn't really performing, and you check in and see why that's happening. It could be that you have a brilliant way of asking questions when there's a problem. So a problem occurs, there's a team meeting to try and solve it, and you're very good at listening, synthesizing information, and asking questions. Now, those aren't tangible skills, as in you wouldn't put that on your CV, but they are incredibly useful skills. And sometimes they are the most valuable skills that you can bring to a team. So take a moment, sit down, grab yourself a big piece of paper, grab your phone. What are the tangible and intangible value that you bring to your teams, your organizations, your communities? And try and think about yourself as a whole person, not just as the work Emma or the work person. Think about yourself as a whole person here. It's really helpful just to broaden your horizons slightly. Now, the next thing, number 4, the thing I'm going to suggest you do is future pace yourself. So we've had a look now at the status quo. We've looked at where we are, what we're feeling, what we have to offer, and what's holding us back, where we're procrastinating. Now we want to jump to the future. So if I had a magic wand and I could wave that magic wand and you could have the career agency and the career that you want, what would that look like? What would you be doing? Where would you be doing it? Who would you be doing it with? Who would you be doing it for? What would be the impact of that role? And I really want you to have a think about, if you were doing all of those things and you were watching yourself, what would you see yourself doing? What would you hear yourself saying? What would you feel in yourself? What emotions would be being stirred up by you doing this thing? What would people say about you? What would they be saying about you? And I really want you to take some time to make that visualization as real, as solid, and as 3D as possible, so that it becomes alive for you. We can't be anything that we cannot imagine. So we need to be able to imagine it first of all, and then we can step into that place. And actually, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to think about what resources, what things are you doing in the future that you could pull into your present? What is this version of you, this Emma, in my instance, this Emma doing that I could pull towards the Emma of now, and start doing those things now and start to pull that future visualization towards you? Because once we start to think about, well, actually, I already do this. I just had stopped noticing it. And actually, I'm really good at that. And I am doing it a lot of the time. Or I'm very good at articulating my needs here. So I just need to pick those up and pivot them and drop them into this aspect of my job. So by noticing the resources, the skills, the values and the impact that you're having in the future, and then realigning it to your now, can be incredibly helpful, accelerating what you want to happen, rather than waiting for it to maybe happen when you feel like you're drifting over here with your career. So those are the things that can really, really help reconnect you with your sense of agency, with your career, so that you feel like you're in control of it rather than it being in control of you, and then ending up feeling so disconnected that actually you stop putting yourself out there and then maybe eventually leave as well. So what are the next steps to making sure that those things happen? Right. So the number one thing is get some support. Get some support from whomever. So find a colleague at work that you can talk about this stuff to. Find someone in your family that you can discuss this with. Go talk to your best friend. Go talk to a mentor, someone that you respect, but get some support to get you through this process. Because at the beginning, it can feel really sticky. It can feel hard to get out of where we are because we're stuck, we're stagnated. And it can feel hard if we hit a bump in the road. That first bump in the road can be quite challenging. And it's so easy just to slump back to where we are because it's comfortable, it's easy, it's known. So get some support, get free support, get paid support, whatever you need, but get some support to help you through the process. And you can do this by seeking sponsorship within your organization. So, maybe look at that future you. With that future you, who is she talking to? Who are her allies? Who has supported her in this process of getting to here? And then jump back to now and start making those relationships, start reaching out to those people within your organization, beyond your organization. It doesn't really matter, but get that sponsorship. So when you do start putting yourself forward for those roles, those senior roles, you've got someone who's got your back in the process. Get training, but there's a caveat here. Make sure it's training you actually need, you really genuinely need. Not a training that's procrastinating and putting you off from taking action. So it might be that you've been in your job for 10, 15 years, and so you've not really looked at your CV for a very long time. I would suggest that you go out and you find someone who can help you create a much better CV, because the way CVs are created now is very different from 15 years ago. So we want to make sure that we are as up to date with those kind of things as possible. So get training. If you need interview training, get some interview training. If you haven't done an interview for a long time, they have really changed. And the way we need to present ourselves has changed massively. So think about realistically, what training do I need to give myself, to support myself, to make sure that I can make these changes as effective as possible. If you've done all those things, then you are ready to start applying for jobs. So start applying and use it as market research. Okay, we want a lightness about this stuff. Okay, because if we go into, there's my notifications, apologies. If we go into these scenarios where we are taking it all very seriously and we're taking ourselves too seriously, it can go a bit wrong. We get a bit grippy around the scenario and we're not presenting our best selves. So go out there, use those interviews as market research. What's going on out there? Who is being paid what? What does that role actually entail? do I even want to be doing this? Do I want to work for this organization? So use it as market research to find out more about yourself and what you really want, to find out about the organizations, to find out about the roles. Look at where your skills are really strong and where they're not so strong, and where you might need to reinforce those skills so that when you are applying for a job you really, really want, you're doing it in the best way possible. And then the final thing for next steps is let the market know. Now, obviously, caveat here, where it's appropriate, you may not want your organization to know that you're interviewing, but there may be people out there that you can talk to and you can say, listen, I'm looking, let me know if things come up. You know, if you can refer me to particular organizations or particular people I need to be talking to, amazing. So with discretion, start to make it known that you are looking for things. And that might be internally. So that might be a conversation with your boss saying, listen, I really want to get a promotion in the next round of promotions. I really want to be heading towards here. What do I need to be doing? Who do I need to be talking to make sure that I am going to be ready and there when these opportunities arise? So making it known about what you want, really, really important. So what have we talked about today? We've talked about the fact that women are leaving senior positions at such a fast rate, 24% over the 7% of their male colleagues, and 80% of women just haven't had a promotion since COVID started, which is a huge number. And when we start to feel like we are losing agency over our careers, that becomes our narrative. It affects our communication. It becomes the story within our organization. It becomes our story that we kind of carry around, and we get stuck in this frustration, stagnation, recrimination cycle, and we stop putting ourselves forward. So we stop giving ideas in meetings. We stop putting ourselves forward for particular roles or for promotions. We don't ask for pay rises in the same way that other people might do that. And we start to feel, it can be really easy to feel that we are not being seen, we are not being heard, we're undervalued and undernoticed. So with all of those things, it's very hard then to move into a place where you go, I'd love to be doing that job. I really want to move forward, and putting yourself out there and applying for that job. We've also seen evidence with those amazing women. So I think what's that, 8-9 women in total out of 20. So that's nearly 50% have taken absolute agency over their careers by doing some very, very simple things. And those simple things that we talked about, notice how you feel. Take the time to notice what's going on inside you and what you feel about yourself, your career, and where it's going. Do you need another PhD? Notice if you are procrastinating and doing the if I've done X, then I can do Y language. Check in with yourself that this is true, absolutely 100% true, or is it a procrastination technique? Do you really, really need that PhD? Record the tangible and intangible things that you have to offer your team and your organization. And remember, those intangible things are probably more valuable than you are putting stock on, and that perhaps the organization is putting stock on as well. Future pace yourself. So imagine where you would like to be in the future. What are you doing, saying, thinking, achieving? What is the impact that you're having? And what resources can you pull from your future into the current now? What are you already doing that is as close to that future you as possible? And bringing those things into your current practice, recognizing that you're already doing some of these things, and then amplifying those things can really make a huge impact. And then we said, get support. So get support, whether that's paid or unpaid. Seek sponsorship within or beyond your organization, whatever is appropriate. Get the training that you really need, not just think that it's going to help you stave off doing something or taking action. That's not what we're talking about. Actual training that's going to benefit what you're going to do. Start applying for jobs. Use it as market research about the role, the marketplace, your skills, all of that kind of thing. And try and take it as lightly as possible. And then when you find the role that you really, really want, you're going to go in showing up in your best energy. And finally, let the marketplace know that you're looking. Let them know that you are available where and when it is appropriate. But I think if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, is that you do have agency over your career. It might not feel like that right in this second, but you really do. And if you feel disconnected from it, you now have simple, actionable steps to get yourself back into that sense of career agency. And if you'd like to have a longer, further, more specific conversation about you and what's going on for you and your career, feel free to book in for a coffee chat. I'd love to discuss your career and your communication and where it's going with you. That would be an absolute delight. Thank you for listening. Take care, and I wish you a fabulous day. Bye now.